Have you ever wondered what could get you in trouble on the streets, like over 100 years ago? Well, we've actually got our hands on a legal time capsule that tells us exactly that. So, let's dive in, shall we?
Okay, so what we're looking at here is the Telangana Towns Nuisances Act, which was first written way back in 1889. I mean, think about that. That's the era of horse-drawn carts, gas lamps, just a totally different world, right? And for that world, this was pretty much the official rule book for how you were supposed to act in public.
But, and you're going to love this, here's the kicker. This piece of 19th century law wasn't just, left in a dusty archive somewhere. Nope. It was officially adapted for modern use in Telangana as recently as 2016. I mean, seriously, a 130-year-old law is still in some way on the books today.
So that just raises this incredible question, doesn't it? What was a public nuisance over a century ago? Well, that's what we're going to find out. Let's use the law itself as our guide and take a look.
All right, let's get right into the details of the act. We're going to break down the original rules, everything from traffic to, well, public decency, and really get a feel for what life was like in a town back then. Okay, first things first, we need to know where these rules applied. The law talks about any public place, and it defines that super broadly. Basically, it means anywhere you could go that wasn't your own house, a road, a street, a market. So the really important thing to get here is that these rules covered almost everything you did the second you stepped outside your front door.
All right, now for the good stuff. What was actually on this official nuisance list? Well, it turns out this law was incredibly detailed. It laid out a whole set of rules for how people were expected to behave in public.
You can kind of group all the offenses into 4 big categories. And these really give us a great snapshot of what people were worried about back then. Traffic and obstruction, public decency and order, animal control, and of course, public sanitation. Keeping things clean.
This first one feels surprisingly modern, right? It's basically one of the first traffic laws ever. Even before cars, they knew you needed a simple rule to avoid chaos. Just stay on the left side of the road.
And get this, here's the 19th century version of a parking ticket. You couldn't just leave your bullet card sitting in the middle of the street for longer than you needed to. It really goes to show you, traffic jams are not a new problem. They've been a headache for a very long time.
Okay, moving on to public decency. The law uses this, very formal, kind of delicate language. It says you can't commit a nuisance by easing himself. We all know what that means, right? No peeing in public. They were so serious about it that parents were even responsible for their kids. Clearly, public decorum was a huge deal.
And, of course, what rule book would be complete without something about being drunk and disorderly? The law was pretty clear. If you were found drunk and couldn't take care of yourself, or were just causing a scene, you were in trouble. It seems like trying to keep the peace in public is one of those problems that just never goes away. But it wasn't all about just keeping things tidy and orderly. This act was also seriously concerned with public safety. I mean, with preventing actual physical harm to both people and animals.
Yeah, looking at this list, you can really start to picture the everyday dangers back then. Imagine uncovered wells that kids could fall into, sewage just running into the street spreading who knows what, ferocious dogs without muzzles, even loose horses. This law was designed to tackle those very real, very scary risks.
But here's something that I find pretty remarkable. The law didn't just see animals as a potential threat to be managed. It actually saw them as living beings that deserved protection from human cruelty.
Just listen to the language here. Cruelly beats, ill-treats, tortures. Wow, that is strong. This wasn't some friendly suggestion. It was a clear, enforceable rule against animal abuse. It was an actual crime to mistreat the animals that were so essential to everyday life and work back then.
So, we've got all these rules for behavior, for safety, for animal welfare. But a law is pretty useless if you can't enforce it, right? So the big question is, how did they actually make people follow these rules?
So what do you think happened? Let's say you got caught leaving your car parked in the street or letting your dog run wild. What was the punishment? The penalties really tell us a lot about what they considered a big deal.
Okay, so for most of the smaller stuff, the penalty was a fine, up to 50 rupees, or maybe 8 days in jail. But take a look at this. For things they considered more serious, like being cruel to an animal or leaving a well unfenced, that could get you up to a whole month in prison. That really shows you where their priorities were.
And the way they enforced this was super direct. If a police officer saw you breaking one of these rules, they could arrest you right then and there. No warrant needed. It was all about stopping the problem immediately to keep things in order.
The procedure for animal cruelty cases was even more interesting and, honestly, kind of ahead of its time. An agent from the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, which was a civilian group, not the police, had the exact same power as an officer to arrest someone on the spot for hurting an animal. That's pretty cool.
Now, on the flip side, the law also had a much tougher, harsher side. And this really reflected the serious public health fears of the time. To stop the spread of diseases like rabies, local magistrates actually had the power to order the destruction of stray dogs in their area. Pretty stark, but that's how they saw it.
Okay, let's wrap this up. We've just taken a deep dive into this absolutely fascinating piece of legal history, a document that's basically a bridge connecting a world from over a century ago to our own.
I mean, as we've seen, this law was a perfect mirror of its time, wasn't it? It was all about solving the real, everyday problems of life in the late 1800s. Things like traffic jams caused by horses or the very real danger of an open well. It's literally a snapshot of history, just written down as a set of rules. And that kind of leaves us with one last thought to chew on. The specific nuisances have definitely changed. Today, we're not worried about runaway horses, right? We're worried about e-scooters blocking the entire sidewalk, or someone blasting music on their phone on public transport. But the basic problem is exactly the same. How do we all get along and share our public spaces? So I'll leave you with this. If you were writing a new version of this law for today, what's the #1 public nuisance you'd put on that list?